Hello everyone and welcome to another QATest webinar. It gives me great pleasure to have our partner TestBirds guest presenting with us today. Before we start, please take a moment to check your audio visual settings while I run through a few items about how you can participate in today's event. Today's webinar, UX/CX, Finding and Keeping the Holy Grail of Retailers' Etailers, will last approximately 30 to 40 minutes with around 15 minutes at the end for your questions. This webinar is interactive and you will be asked to participate in 3 short polls. In addition, and as always, you'll have the opportunity to submit your questions to today's presenters by typing them into the questions pane of the control panel. The control panel is situated on the right-hand side of your screen. You can send these questions in at any time. We will record your questions and address these during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. A reminder that a recording of this webinar will follow within 24 hours. I'm now delighted to introduce you to today's presenters who will tell you a bit more about themselves. Harve Kleeman from QATest and Soren Stoon from TestBirds. Harve, over to you.
Hi guys, really nice to have you. So today we're going to talk about finding and keeping the holy grail of retailers, e-tailers. A bit about us. My name is Harve Kleeman and I'm leading the UX testing in QATest. I've worked with many different industries and clients since I started at QATest around 2008. I really like being involved in making products better with my clients, focusing on improvements and making better UX. I would like to introduce Soren from TestBirds.
Yes, thank you, Harve, and also thank you, Sarah, for the nice introduction. I'm Sören. I'm the Digital Product Manager here at TestBirds, and I'm a former Senior Customer Success Manager. I've worked with large enterprise clients of ours to implement TestBirds services and also to customize our services based on our customers' need to make sure that everything fits nicely into their testing setup so everything runs smoothly and seamlessly. And I'm looking forward to today's webinar to show you some of the learnings we have made in the past.
Great. So we'll tell you a bit about ourselves, the companies we've worked in. So just a short introduction to QATest. QATest is a pure play testing company, meaning that QA and testing is all we do. We're the largest independent software testing service provider in the world, almost 4,000 staff globally. And when I say globally, I mean US, UK, Europe, Israel, India. We're also opening new offices across the globe. We integrate with our clients to align with quality expectation and achieve their business goal. This is our 22nd year. We can deliver different service model, allowing us to either work with you flexibly to get to your business needs.
Yeah, just a few words about TestBirds. We have been founded just almost a decade ago, so not quite as long as QATest, but in the past almost 10 years, we have established ourselves as a world leader when it comes to crowd testing. And with our crowd of over 400,000 people, we can make sure that we provide a huge device diversity with their own real devices and give our clients access to specific target groups all around the globe. So these testers are located in all countries all over the world, and we can utilize them to provide a high quality testing approach for these applications, websites, softwares, whatever digital product you can picture, to make sure we bring these to the next level of quality.
Okay, I'm moving to the poll.
I'll just launch the poll now. Okay.
So most of our participants are doing user research or thinking about doing user research.
Okay. I'll move on to the next poll. Are you in the retail industry?
Okay, so 40% of you are in the retail industry. It's really nice to meet you.
Okay, and the final poll just coming now. Is your website ready for the festive season? Okay, I'm just going to close that now. Thank you, everyone, and I'll share the results.
Oh, wow. That really changed from 100%. Yes, we're ready. Okay. It looks like there is mostly we're almost ready and, we're ready, but there is a 40% that, we're not even close to be ready, which is probably honest to most people. Great. So really nice to meet you all. And yeah, great to know that we have some retail here to talk about some of the challenges. So we start here. Some of the current challenges that there is in retail. As you know, basically there is a push for digital transformation and getting everything available being online. If you cannot open the store, you should at least have a way to still sell all the products. In the past, it used to be that not all the stock was available online. This can cause a problem because restrictions keep on changing, and if your clients can't buy a product online, you might not be able to even sell it. There is a high demand change. As you know, March this year, we saw, even here in the UK, problems with trying to get delivery slot from the supermarket. Sometimes the demand is driven by a sale or basically release of a new product. The app and website doesn't always deal with the big amount of users. Sometimes it's millions of users trying to do the same thing, and the website crashed, the app crashed, there's too much demand. And there's basically the COVID-19 that changed reality completely, because in different areas around the globe, stores are closing, lockdowns happen. It was very different to anything we knew before. I know we call it new reality now, but a lot of the chain supply and process needed to change. Employees need to be kept basically in physical distance, and also physical shop might be closed for weeks or even months at a time. Even our own personal priorities changed a lot this year, just because we don't necessarily shop as we usually do. For example, I won't shop as much high fashion things because I don't get out as much as I used to or as much as I want to. And basically, we need to be aware that a lot of things change even in manufacturing and how fast we can get the products out there to our clients.
Yeah, maybe just looking at this content slide for a minute, I want to give you an overview of what we're planning to talk about today. So Hava was just kind enough to basically explain why are we having this webinar. So there are currently some challenges especially in the retail industry, but as you've seen, probably these reasons are also applicable to any other industry currently. And we kind of see that especially the retail industry has some additional pressure to transfer, to go from retail to e-tail. And we have identified three main areas or three larger areas where we see massive improvements, which we want to share today. And these three are basically how to tackle optimizing conversion rates even better, how to deal with demand, and also how to improve your UX or customer experience. And we're going to tackle these on the next slide, but maybe looking more at the retail industry on the next slide, there is an interesting transition that we have seen. So basically, when you think about a retail store, you can kind of separate the experience into like three chapters from a customer. So in order to achieve a great customer experience, you kind of need to tackle all three areas. So when you walk into a store, there's usually like phase before you're actually visiting a store. So there's a brand perception, there are emotions involved, there are expectations towards going into the store and the whole brand itself. There are preferences, there are expectations in terms of clothing line. So this is usually addressed by advertising, marketing, or previous purchases, or even like mouth to mouth. And when you then walk into a store, like retailers have also like perfection this bit. They offer great customer service. They have like a nice store design, which is in line with the brand perception. Like for upper class stores, there might be amenities. And in the UK, harbor probably tea or coffee involved. And you might get a nice beverage of like a glass of water, for example. And in the end, there's a nice and smooth checkout process where you get like a nice bag with like the logo, and it's nice and appealing in general. And then afterwards, the post-purchase phase, it's about the packaging. If you unbox something, how nice is it? The product quality, of course, plays a huge role. And then there's also customer service. If I've purchased something and I want a refund, I can just walk back and tell the person working there, oh, I actually don't like this product, or I want to replace it because the quality wasn't nice enough. Then there's usually like a very smooth process for it. But when these traditional retailers go digital, they go e-tail, they are lacking some parts, which you can see on the next slide. And it's essentially it would be the similar concept for a great customer experience. But what we see, and it's simplified with these pictures a bit to make it tangible, the brand perception stays the same. It's basically the pre-store phase, and there might be like a specific fashion line involved and some values like sustainability. Think about United Colors of Benetton, for example, whose marketing is like very much focused on their values and unveiling global crises. And these kind of companies then start developing an online store, and of course the store needs to be in line with its corporate design. It needs to have a nice design, and generally, of course, the fashion needs to be available, and there are some basic functionalities. And we see challenges in three main areas that need to be tackled much more thoroughly at the moment. There are challenges when it comes to conversion rate, because what we're going to see is that a lot of people are missing something, even in the retail industry and e-tail industry. There are issues with the performance and then the post-purchase customer experience. And we want to start with our perceived issue when it comes to conversion rate. And what we see is basically similar to Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And I'm sure many of you are aware of Simon Sinek's and Start With Why, but I'm just going to paraphrase it a bit to also get everybody else up to speed. And Simon Sinek, it's a great read, by the way. You should totally read it or check out, there's like a good TEDx talk on YouTube. What Simon Sinek says basically is that any company and any business, instead of starting with a what do they build or how do they build it, kind of start with a why do they build it. They should start with a purpose. I think nowadays would be a bit more up-to-date term. So why is a company doing it? If you think about Apple, for example, what do they build? They build computers, smartphones. How do they build it? In a simplified way. But basically what Apple does is like they started with a why. They believed in thinking differently and challenging the status quo. And they did that by rethinking products, and in the end they happened to build smartphones, for example, because they felt there was a product they could kind of challenge in the status quo. And this kind of setup can be transferred to user testing, for example, because what everybody does kind of is, what does a user do on a website? You can think about Google Analytics here. You can track where a person went and what did they do, how many people did it, and that's what basically everybody does. They can track that very easily. They can even see how is a person doing it, maybe on different devices. Are they using a smartphone, a computer? Is there like a combination involved? And also they can look at the user journey, but then only like the 5 to 10 top % actually start with a why. So why does a user behave the way they do? Why do they go a certain way? And it's very important to basically start with why here. Why does a user just have the did the user walk the way he went on a website? And to make it a bit more tangible, what we mean is when you look at the next slide, it's just a visualization of a traditional A/B test. And what many companies do is they have a discussion internally, they've seen it from data, they come up with two competitor versions in terms of design, layout, branding, all these kind of things, and then just let them compete against each other to see what does a user do when he goes to the website, which version does he actually prefer. But at this point, we see that a lot of resources have been invested already because you've discussed it internally, these designs have been created, they have been implemented by the development team. So you invest a lot of resources to create two different versions. And here comes where QATest and TestBirds can support with that. We want to start with a why. In our kind of setup, looking at the next slide, you can see that we want to kind of integrate the user into this kind of testing setup. We call it a prototype evaluation, and we combine it with remote interviews. So we can kind of utilize the benefits of both services, and we want to involve users when talking about these prototypes. So usually like 40 testers, it's a good mix of target groups, just depending on who the client is. If it's a mainly female store, like there would be a higher split towards female, but if it's a more male store like Jack and Jones, for example, it would be more male, of course. We just want to make sure that the target groups we involve in the test cycle also matches the target group of our client. And then we can find out if we present these kind of prototypes, why do users prefer a certain prototype? What are their preferences? What are their needs? Or why do they dislike things? And it's quite interesting to see if a person sees it for the first time and thinks about, oh, what would I actually do here? And then we can aggregate this kind of feedback that we get and provide it to our client. And then this information about preferences and need is then adapted and put into prototypes, which are then developed instead of coming up with like two live versions already in the beginning, and then you're just going to kill one of the versions. You've wasted already quite a lot of resources on one of the versions that's not going to make it.
Can you give me an example for an outcome you had from a recent test?
I think the best example that I recently saw, because I'm also personally very much a fan of it, is the trend towards bottom navigation. We had a case where on a website, so on an e-shop, there was basically a discussion going on. Should we stick to a hamburger menu on the left-hand side, top left corner to get to the settings and menu, or should we do bottom navigation? And it was a huge discussion just because iOS and Android have updated their design guidelines, but those only apply to applications, of course. But when we did the testing, we could actually see that users were expecting a bottom navigation also in a web store. And there was a bit of a surprise for us as well when we first saw it. And then we saw actually patterns that also for other kind of services, users demanded the same kind of bottom navigation, just because it's simpler to use on a large smartphone where it's quite literally unhandy to move your thumb to the top left corner to get access to the menu, or like the filters and the shopping categories where it's just simpler to have it at the bottom.
No, I agree. It's also, there's something about the hamburger menu that feels like it's a bit more scattered because you kind of need to dig into the menu and trying to find the right category to look under it. So it's always a bit of a mess.
Yeah, the hamburger menu is very much affected, I guess, from like computer and like the reading direction in like the Western world, at least, where it's like from left to right. And then we started with computers, and then that's kind of where we started. So it was natural to have the menu on the left-hand side and in the top corner. But nowadays it's changing a lot towards more what does the user need and not where are we coming from.
Yeah, I agree. So I'll talk about dealing with the demand part. There is something missing in the next slide. And if you didn't know, PS5 was released today. And we don't have a picture of it because we didn't know, but there is actually a lot of demand to buy the PS5. Even today, like a lot of websites globally either had a lot of performance issues, and even when we know there is a release date, it's really hard to anticipate how much demand will happen. And there is a lot of other reasons, as you know, there is Black Friday in the end of this month, and a lot of people are waiting for a great deal to buy a product that would be even slightly to a lot cheaper than usual. There's seasonal buying like Christmas sales. You know, everybody needs to buy shops for their family. And this year there was some panic buying. As you know, there was a rumor started somewhere in Australia about toilet paper running out in the supermarket, and suddenly all over the world people starting telling the same rumor, and basically supermarkets globally ran out of toilet paper off the shelf or started restricting people on how many toilet paper they should buy, and then restricting other products because this panic started from toilet paper but then it moved to other products. So it was quite interesting to see basically trends to do with panic buying. This problems that can lead from having a lot of demand is confusing mostly for the user because they're trying to do something, they're trying to buy a product, they can't do it, and once they're trying to buy a product and they can't buy it, they're frustrated, they need more support, they're going to basically this, the, the community that is supposed to support them when they're having a problem with the shop, and then whatever customer support can't really help them because there might be too much demand on them as well. They can go to social media, drive down the brand perception, both saying, you know, to their friends, to the world, like, oh, this, you know, the website fell down, I can't buy it if it's a new product or something I really need. But in the end of the day, this costs the company money because they're trying to sell something and they can't because basically the infrastructure is down. And it's really, really hard to pin down what's the problem when it's live, when everybody are trying to access the same place at the same time and basically the website or the app can't deal with the demand. It's a bottleneck and we can't pin it down in real time. We need to investigate. So our approach to how we want to look at the problem is usually more a hybrid approach. We're trying to look at both what happens on the back end on the servers, but also what is the user is experiencing on their side. So while we load the servers with virtual users that are doing scripted user journeys, basically stuff like if it is a retail, they'll log in, they'll add stuff to the basket, they'll try and do the payment process while we send real users to do their regular user testing and see what they're seeing on their real devices. This is how we get to know the problem both on where is the problem exactly on the server side, but also identifying what's the bottleneck while knowing how the user are experiencing the problem at real time. On the user side, it could be that just the website is a bit slow and not necessarily crash, but in some bad cases, the website can throw errors and not be available and not allow the user to proceed basically with buying the product. We then take all the results of everything we saw, both again monitoring the servers in real time and also the user looking on their mobile device, and we take conclusions how we can make user experience better. This is a client app and website that basically set the bar for performance and user experience, serving quality, visually rich content to global audience that is growing really rapidly. So basically, they had 1 million users and they needed to have a test that allows them to load the server with 1 million users within 5 minutes. And that demand grew into 5 million users. So the objective was to perform tests by loading it, and we defined the testing strategy and tools used to support this. We created we created the iterative process to allow us to test different phases in the performance, and we helped to identify an issue that was basically was potentially brought down many other production system by impacting the SLAs between the client and the AWS.
Is there any example you could give of like a good way how to handle such high loads, or like?
Yeah, so I know this year actually gave a lot of like original solutions to problem like queuing and waiting for a delivery slot. So some companies basically, instead of making people wait for 2 hours in the queue for a supermarket slot, they basically created a queue while they send you a text, or they gonna give you an email or give you an alert to when you can complete your shopping or book your slot with the shop. And that will allow the user not to wait frustratingly to, I don't know, 6,000 other users to complete their shopping, but get a notification, well, now you can book your slot, now you can complete your purchase. And it does help a lot to the users. Even when the solution is not immediate, sometimes even have a in the meantime solution can make a big difference for all users.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty cool example. It also like tackles the whole thing as a whole in the end, because even though it might not be perfect, it's kind of a quick fix, and as a customer, it solves an issue that I have when seeing an error that I don't know what's happening, I don't know when I can access it again. I might waste an hour just trying to reload, or just wait an hour standing in front of the store. So I kind of like that approach, even though it doesn't tackle the origin of the problem. It kind of looks at the whole thing as like a customer, like a whole customer experience, which I think is also like a nice transition to our third challenge and recommendation for today, is to improve the UX and actually just look at it from like a whole customer experience perspective. Because what we see on the next slide is kind of like a recap of what we looked at before, that a lot of people look at brand perception and online store, and they might have started with a why, and they have a great way of dealing with demand and all these kind of things. And what we see more and more often is that it kind of just stops there, because somebody thinks, oh, I'm responsible for user experience, and somebody else is responsible for delivery or customer support. But then just think about the last delivery you've gotten from maybe like a large online store, where you bought something for a couple of €100 maybe. It was maybe a technical thing, a camera, a laptop, and it's like a nice, super nice device, and it just arrives in like a brown paper box. And you might be unhappy with the box already, and then you want to get a refund, or there's an issue with the device, and you contact customer service, and it's a pain. Let's face this often. You reach out, there's slow in responding, refunds take a while, and this is still part of your online store. While we see then when clients go digital, they often kind of just focus on the online store and not necessarily in the after sales in that regard. And with our kind of setup with QATest and Testbirds, we want to make sure to when we do testing, to actually tackle the whole customer experience. And you can see a layout of this kind of testing on the next slide, because as a customer, you kind of go shopping online, you put some items into your shopping cart, maybe a dress, a t-shirt, some pants, you put it to the shopping cart, and you actually make a purchase. And many testing providers actually start with a shopping cart when it comes to testing, because they don't want to deal with a live system. It might be too risky. But with this kind of crowd testing setup, you can actually run through the purchase, and also make the delivery happen. There are often tracking links involved where I, as a customer, can track where my parcel is at the moment. On Amazon, for example, I can like live track the delivery on the day when I get it. It's kind of like, yeah, like an online event in these days of COVID. But it's something happening, and there is progress happening. So I get actually tracking information while waiting for something, which as a customer makes the wait again much nicer. It's comparable to what Java said before, where if I have an error message, I at least get some progress shown to me so I can see what's going on. And what we do, QATest and Testbirds combined, is get the customer into this kind of testing setup. And on the next slide, you can see that we call it end-to-end testing. It's a testing where the focus is to test the entire process from purchase over delivery to potentially refund. And there's a good starting point when you start with 25 testers. Again, target group matters a lot because different target groups have different expectations towards packaging. A tech-savvy person might not care about a nice unboxing experience as like maybe an upper-class person who spends multiple €100 on fashion, for example. So the target group very much is very much relevant in this regard. And what we've seen in the past from the end-to-end test that we've done, especially in the retail industry, is that there is a difference between the whole customer experience after something has been purchased compared to the brand perception. The brand perception is usually much better than the whole thing after I hit on purchase. And this is where we recommend to everybody listening, but also everybody else who basically is in the e-tail industry, to tackle this topic as a whole customer experience, and don't just look at, oh, the purchase has been done, so that event has been triggered, so that was successful. Because if the delivery is not good or the refund process is not good, the customer in the end might not return to make a second purchase.
There is also the point that sometimes the customers decide to abandon the process in different stages. So for example, they did complete the purchase, but then they cancel it even before delivery. What happens then? How do I deal with that problem? How can I make the refund happen faster so the client will be happy because he didn't need the delivery, didn't cost me as much?
Yeah, that's true.
There's so many aspects to this process that a lot of the times the retail company doesn't look at, like, you know, they cancel at this phase. Why is it taking 5 days to make a payment refund?
Yeah, I literally just had a case with, let's say, one of the largest online stores, and I had to get a refund, and it took almost a week. I mean, I'm in Germany here, so we're not very digital, of course, but it took a week to send it back, and then they said it's going to take another 5 to 7 days to refund the money. And I know that they have a great customer service and a great delivery time in general, but that part of the whole process is a bit annoying for me.
Yeah. And I know in general, like a lot of companies globally, like if you ask them what drove their digital transformation, they will answer COVID-19. It's just reality. It's because they had to.
Yeah, that's true. Especially as a German again, that drove a lot for digital transformation. But I think we're like going off topic here a bit. I think we're gonna have some Q&A in a few minutes, but maybe you can just wrap up and conclude with some learnings to take away today.
Yes, no problem. So basically, we do recommend 4 simple key considerations for you. You need to start as early as you can. Prototype sometimes might be even too late. You can go with concept. You can go with some sort of a drawing of an idea that is not even mature enough, and check with your real end users, your real demographics. Does it work for you? Should I spend any money on developing it? And you can save so much money in the process by not developing what they don't want, but focusing on what they want. That also means that you should tackle all the parts in the process, not just, not just putting the item in the cart, not just the checkout, but also what happens when the user has a problem? How do we deal with it? How do we deal with refunds, returns? Involve your real users, not just basically people that are very professional in doing QA, but your real users will be able to tell you what they feel about the journey and what is wrong or what is right for them. And think about the customer experience. It's really important to keep on making sure your users are happy, even though UX can be perfect. CX can be really bad sometimes. And that's it for us for today. I'll move to the Q&A session.
Thank you. Thanks, Hava. Okay. Thank you, Hava and Soren. So this is an interesting webinar because we can all relate to customer and user experience, which is especially important at this time. So I'm going to look for questions now. I've got a couple here. Let me go. Number one, if I wanted to involve you early in the process, how would it look like?
Soren, is that okay? I'll take this one.
Yeah, sure,
Okay.
go ahead.
So you can involve us very early by basically setting with us what is your demographics, your geographics. We can find your target audience. We can go, as I said before, to concept level. We don't even have to have a prototype to do testing. We can talk about the idea of having something done and interview different users. It's usually going to be a smaller group that we'll do this exercise with, and I understand better how much you should invest to it and then develop a prototype that will work.
Yeah, I would second that. To start as early as possible. I mean, it could potentially even start before actually having a prototype. If you want to create a concept, it might be interesting to actually talk to your existing users and what they want before actually designing something in a prototype version, which is something we've seen basically from our clients to understand what is a current need that we don't solve at the moment.
Okay. So let me just see what other questions we've got here. Right, so can you give me an example of CX going wrong? An example of CX going wrong.
Do you want to take that, Java, or should I?
You can take it. I can always give another example.
I can think of, like, actually it's a personal example. I bought a mattress online the other day, and it's like, I don't know, 400 or 500 euros or something. I wanted to try it out, and the purchase process was amazing, like super smooth, perfect. And then I hit purchase, and then I got a notification delivery is going to take 3 to 4 weeks, which is like, oh, okay, that's not cool. Like, I just spent 5 minutes purchasing something, and then it takes another 4 weeks to get it. But I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. And then the product didn't work for my back, so I had back pain. I wanted to refund it, which is fine. It might not be the issue of the product, but just a mismatch maybe. The customer service took way too long from my perspective. I mean, we are all spoiled nowadays with quick customer service. Not getting a response within 1 day is already perceived as a bad example of customer service. And if the refund and the return process would have worked well, then I might have recommended this product to my friends and family because it might have been my bag, but the whole customer experience just didn't work as a general because they were so much focused on the user experience that I would, like, on a net promoter score, I wouldn't recommend them to anyone, which from my perspective is an issue because they looked at the user experience being good, but not the customer experience being good. But that's just a very personal example. Maybe you have a more professional
Yes, no,
example,
it's really hard to strike a balance between, a lot of the focus on development is being set to the user experience being a great one, but a lot of the times when you come to dealing with customer experience, you either deal with people that are not necessarily trained to deal with real users complaining or dealing with how to calm down the problem. I know that for anybody that ever used any airline and they needed to book a ticket online, it was easy. When you come to the airport, there might be a problem. You forgot to print something, and then you need to queue in a different queue, and it's hours, and you get frustrated, and nobody's there to calm you down and tell you, here, I'm going to fix it for you. It's going to be easy. You have no chat bubble to say, how can you resolve it for me? It's just you dealing with people, and when you're dealing with masses of people, you can't always be as nice.
Yeah, I think we can all relate there.
Definitely. Okay, another question here. Did you see any changes in the industry due to COVID-19? Maybe what are the changes?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. I think like the biggest change was that there is a need for digitalization, and in Germany we've seen the public sector like transforming very, very quickly. It has been like transforming over the past 5 to 10 years, where everybody said, oh, we need to become digital, but there was never actually any need because the German society kind of works offline. I don't know if you've ever if you ever wanted to pay something with credit card in Germany, good luck. That has changed actually, but we've seen the public sector especially moving towards digital, but also then, of course, traditional restaurants or retailers who have a need to now start delivering. So I think that has brought something into movement very, very quickly, even though it, of course, had a lot of downsides.
Yes, trying to do something too quick can be a problem. And I know, at least globally, a lot of things change. So in the UK, it's not a great example because a lot of businesses here are always accepting, for example, contactless payment. But a lot of countries that not necessarily had this technology move forward as quickly, like a lot of businesses became more cashless now because of the spread of the virus. So they're trying to make adjustment to make people feel safer. So even that is a change that COVID did, is making everybody a lot more friendly to contactless payment.
Yeah, and also to booking slots in advance, for example. So to spread out customer demand, which happens online and offline, where it's also much more user-friendly nowadays. So I don't have to go somewhere and just hope that I can get a slot to go in, but I can just check beforehand if my gym, for example, has free capacity, which is a nice experience as a customer, where like any business that requires physical interaction of some sort has some need now to transform into that direction from my perspective.
Okay, thank you. Next question. How can a beginner start off with UX? Who would like that one?
Chava, do you? Or should I?
You can start.
Okay. I think the first step is to talk to people. And depending on the size, just talking to friends and family is a good first step to validate ideas. But in the end, you need to talk to unbiased users, which are potential customers. And depending on the budget, it makes sense to involve us, of course. If it's an enterprise and a sophisticated product, then involving completely unbiased, let's say, random users into a UX research process is absolutely necessary, because an unknown person, a complete stranger, will be completely honest in regards of their preferences. And we've seen harsh feedback, to be honest, in like remote interviews, because people are at home and they feel comfortable and they don't think, oh, I'm sharing this with a person who is involved into the product. They're just sharing their emotions, which is the perfect environment. It's the perfect result you want to get when talking to users. So that's the first step in terms of UX research from my perspective.
Yeah, and if you want to understand how the process works, there is a lot of like online material that you can understand the mind of the user, what they're feeling, and why to start with certain questions when you ask, and how you make more defined conclusions to either positive or negative feedback. It's really easy to learn this first step in the process and introduce yourself into UX research in general.
Okay, thank you. And final question here. What is the future scope of UX?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. What's the future will give us? It's a great question. So there is a lot that is happening already. Like, for example, there is a lot of chat bots that are not humans. And most of the time they can respond to our users in, general questions, or how do I get to this option? How do I, for example, open a ticket to return this item to the shop? And you don't really need customer service, for example, as much as you need somebody to just help that client get to the right direction to get better support. So my feeling is AI will take over on customer support in a bigger way than it does now. And instead of just having, for example, a chat box will be calling a call center, and even an AI will pick up the call and will be directing us to get support faster before they actually need to involve a human in the process.
Yeah, that's true. And I think additionally it's a bit of a different topic, but what we see is that it goes towards omni-channel or like multi-devices. I might do research on my smartphone and then actually do the purchase on my laptop. And we see that a lot of the larger companies try to find out how they can make that more seamless. So I don't have to search for the same item again when I move devices, but it's actually already there, because let's take Amazon. Amazon does know that I searched for that item on the app, so why not recommend it to me once I open my computer or my tablet at home. So that's making like life just easier as a user when across devices I kind of get like recommended what I already looked at and don't have like to do the same kind of steps again that I had already done on a different device.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Harvard, did you want to answer anything else?
No, that is true.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Our webinar is now coming to a close. Before we go, I'd like to thank our presenters for sharing their expertise. Harvard and Suren, thank you. And to our partner, Testbirds, it's always a pleasure working alongside your team. And finally, an extended thanks to our audience for joining us and taking part in the interactive session today. If you have any questions about any of the discussion in today's webinar, please reach out to me and I'll make sure our presenters receive your inquiry. My contact details are within an email which will follow once the webinar ends. Just a heads up before we close, you can save your seat at our upcoming webinars by visiting our website qualitestgroup.com/webinars. It leaves me now to say goodbye. So until next time, when we look forward to you joining us again, all the best and goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.